My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm from Your Black World, and I wanted to talk for a second before I start our Saturday class on the Black Wealth Boot Camp. The reason I wanted to talk about this topic is because I've been thinking about the movie Straight Outta Compton since yesterday, since I saw it yesterday, and for me it was just it was a reflective experience. I watched it here in New York, where I'm here. Doing a lot of stuff. We're shooting a movie here for financial lovemaking. I'm also doing some stuff with my daughter, and we're going. And I'm doing this radio show on Monday. It's called The Breakfast Club. And anyway, I was thinking about just how that film was so nostalgic for me because I'm the same age, about the same age as Ice Cube, and in fact, Ice Cube was one of the few people I've ever run into as far as celebrities where I really kind of actually wanted to meet him and talk to him. We almost met. We almost met. We came this close. He was in the hotel and he had gone upstairs and went to sleep, so we didn't get a chance to actually talk. And that was one of the few times where I said, "Man, I wish I wouldn't have minded talking to this guy," because the funny thing is that I don't like meeting most celebrities. I wanted to meet Minister Farrakhan. Let me see. Who else have I met that I really wanted to talk to? I can't think of too many other people, to be honest with you. I don't really care that much about talking to celebrities. But anyway, what's interesting about this this film to me is for black men, especially black men my age, but also black men of all ages. It leads to so many places, so many opportunities for reflection in terms of how your choices can determine your longevity and determine your outcomes. And so, to highlight this point, I want to point out the contrast between what happened with some of the major players who existed in that era. When I think about the major players, these major brands that were built, almost to the point of being these legendary figures, almost like cartoon characters in a way, that were sort of created by the emergence of gangster rap and certain strands of hip hop. You've got Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, the DOC, who, if you know anything about that era, you know that the DOC was probably would have been as famous as Snoop Dogg if he hadn't had his accident. You've got Easy E, of course, Suge Knight, and Death Row Records, and then on the East Coast you had Diddy and Biggie. Now, when you look at this group of people, you see some of these black men survived, some of them did not. I don't know if I threw Tupac in there or not. Of course, you can't forget Tupac. So some of these black men made it, some of them didn't. And in some of these cases, you can delineate between those who made it and those who didn't by their choices. When you look at Dre and Cube, especially, and to some extent Snoop and Diddy, you see guys that made certain choices in their early to mid 20s that allowed them to survive a very chaotic time period in entertainment. On one hand, everybody dreams about wanting to be a famous rapper, but I when I learned about the industry, I didn't dream about being a famous rapper because that's a horrible lifestyle for some people. It's very dangerous. There's a lot of people getting killed and people slinging dope and people doing this and doing. I mean, it's a mess. It's a damn mess. To the point where sometimes being famous can ruin your life, not make it better. But we're so intoxicated by fame that we think that fame is always a good thing. We're intoxicated by money, so we think more money is always a good thing. But actually, having more money is not always a good thing. It's how you make that money. If you can't make that money in a way that gives you peace of mind, then the money did not make your life better. It actually made your life worse. And so, really, when I look at that, when I look at that era, and I think about Dre and Cube, what I see with those two guys, the smartest things that they did was they left. Uh, uh, I guess what I would say disadvantageous situations. They walked away from situations that were exploitative and problematic. Cube was smart enough to walk away from Eazy because he took the time to read his contract. He also had the courage to go and create something of his own, and then he had the courage to expand outside of music and start doing other things. He became a well-rounded businessman, and really, and this is the kind of thing we talk about a lot in the Black Wealth Boot Camp. He he's put himself in a situation where he's allowed or able to leave something to his sons that will sustain them, and their children and their children's children. He's created a multi generational empire. Dr. Dre has created a multi generational empire. If you look at some other celebrities, Will Smith, and you look at what he's doing with his children, he's setting his kids up, and that's one of the reasons why I think black men want to really look into having their own businesses, being their own men, expanding outside of the confines of your situation. Because when you push hard as a man to accomplish things that are going to give you new opportunities, you're able to hook up your children and your grandchildren. There are things I could do for my girls that I wouldn't be able to do if I was so caught up on working for somebody else. Also, if I just made one bad choice after another without thinking about the future, I would also be not just affecting my future, but I'd be affecting their futures as well. You understand? So, when I look at the people in that era who didn't make it, or those who didn't succeed, I think at the top of my list, honestly, is probably Suge Knight, because when I see Suge Knight, I see a guy who wasn't just a famous rapper. That's one thing. He wasn't a king. He was a king maker. He wasn't just a leader. He was a leader of leaders. And Suge had a leadership kind of presence, very big, very strong, and very smart. And he ran what I believe was probably the most powerful record label in the world at that time, or one of the most powerful. Not bigger than the big conglomerates per se, but in terms of being in the hot spot of what was happening in hip hop, Death Row Records was kind of the epicenter of that. And so to see him not take full advantage of that because of a lack of discipline, that's very, very disappointing, because that's the kind of wealth that won't just sustain your family for 20 generations, but it would actually sustain an entire community. I mean, he literally could have lifted up the entire city of Compton by himself, by succeeding with Death Row Records and making investments in the community, hiring hundreds of people, etc. But sometimes we get caught up in small-minded thinking, and it causes us to really miss big opportunities. So that's what I would just generally say. I mean, when I think about Suge, and again, just no disrespect to Suge, because again, I think he's a smart guy. It's just, sometimes when we're young, we make bad choices. When I look at Suge, then I look at Easy E. Easy E, the way he died was seemed to be reflective of the way he lived. If you listen to his music, you heard him repeatedly rap about sex all the time. He would have lyrics like "I put the pussy in the freezer," stuff like that, and and I remember even before that thinking, man, this guy raps about sex a lot. He must have a lot of sex. And back then I was a teenager. I wasn't getting no sex. So I was so I was kind of jealous, but then, I think that lifestyle, having something too easy handed to you at an early age, can cause you to engage in self-destruction. And so, when I see that, I see him, and I see, the situation with Tupac. Of course, Tupac is a great artist, brilliant man, but it just seemed like he was always ready to fight. He was always ready for war. He was always rapping about some sort of altercation. He was always getting into situations. I'm not saying that it makes him a bad person or not, but at the same time, I remember even then thinking, this guy's so confrontational. He's looking for, when he did "Hit 'Em Up," which was one of the greatest diss records of all time. That I would say that the "Ether" by Nas and "No Vaseline" by Ice Cube. Those are my three favorite diss records of all time. And "Hit 'Em Up" was really powerful. But at the same time, you're letting these white folks who run these magazines instigate a beef and a war, that where, because of ego, because if we know everybody's watching, we play into that, and then the next thing you know, everybody gets shot up. And so sometimes, we think that strength means being willing to go to war, but sometimes, eventually, you learn that real strength sometimes means accepting peace, and going after peace, even when you want to go to war and you believe you can win the war. And that's something I've gone through as a man. There have been times where I've been on the brink. I'm talking about just so mad at another brother. I just wanted to. In fact, it wasn't too long ago. I'm not going to talk about it, but I mean, there's a situation that occurred, and it was a public situation. I was so mad. I said, "Oh, man, I could destroy this person if I really wanted to. I know some things. I could really get immature about it." But then I realized that I might win that battle, but the people that respect me would lose the war. They would see me engaged in something that is not good for any of us, and so you know, even with my own life, even to this day, that's something all of us grapple with as men. And so, long story short, I would just say, if you really want to get something out of this movie, and I know I talked about this movie yesterday right as I was walking out of the theater, but I was excited about it, like everybody else, so excited. It just so it reminded me of when I was in college and high school and grad school, and just watching this go down. I followed every inch of the evolution of NWA to Ice Cube's solo career, to the creation of all these groups that came out of Compton, like Compton's Most Wanted, stuff like that. I remember how great the DLC was. I remember what happened to Eazy-E and NWA and the beefs, and I remember watching NWA kind of take a downward turn because of bad business decisions. I mean, you had the greatest rapper, or one of the greatest rappers of all time, Ice Cube, and the greatest lyricist of all time, one of the greatest lyricists. And then you had Dr. Dre, one of the greatest producers of all time. And then Easy was very good as well. And it's just kind of sad. It was sad, very sad to me to see that group break up, right? So, long story short, if you want to get something out of this movie, look at the choices of these young men and how these young choices of young men led to their realities as older men, and then think about how those their choices as young men affect the young men that their wives gave birth to, or their girlfriends gave birth to, and these young men are now becoming adults. And the question is, do are they reaping the benefits of their father's choices, or are they reaping the consequences of their father's choices, right? Some would say it would be better to be Ice Cube's son than to be Suge Knight's son, right? So ask yourself that question and think about that, black man, as you make choices in your life. Same thing for black women too. Our children are always affected by the decisions that we make. That's all I really want to say. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm gonna run off and go teach this class. Until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. I am gone. Peace.